Hi everyone, I'm Steve Stoller.
And I'm Shannah Haley, and this is Inside Plano, where we take you behind the scenes of our city.
We'll introduce you to the faces and places who help make this a great place to live.
And give us lots of reasons to love Plano.
Welcome to spring, Steve Stoller, colleague of mine.
Yes, finally, it's here. I've been waiting for a long time.
Same. So excited to see the trees budding, and knowing that we have more trees that are alive than dead just makes me feel happy inside. Spring is actually my favorite season of the year.
Yeah, I like summer. I like all the swimming.
You are a pool guy.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Steve, we'll jump right to it because we have a long interview segment today, and I'm very excited about our special guest and our topic. But speaking of spring, the other exciting thing that's happening in the city is that a lot of our longtime favorite events are coming back. It's such a great year.
Something else we've been waiting for a very long time.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. So we're going to go through just kind of the highlights of things that are happening this coming month. And for listeners, we're going to drop all of the links to register, get tickets, all of that kind of stuff. They'll be in the show notes. So don't bother scratching down all of this information. Just take note of the things that you're interested in. You want to get started, Steve?
Sure. We've got the rescheduled spring tree giveaway. That's going to be April 2nd. If you remember, the winter storm had canceled it earlier in the year, so we'll get that going.
Yes, and all of the dogs of Plano will be very happy to know that the Easter egg hound hunt is back at Oak Point Park. That's going to be April 9th.
That's a fun event. We've got the Underground Movement Festival Volume 6 at McCall Plaza. That's coming on April 16th.
Yes, and the Great American Cleanup, very, very popular event. That will be April 23rd.
We've got the Waste Ace Fair on April 30th. Can you say that fast 3 times?
That's why I'm smiling. I'm glad you got that one, not me.
You can bring your whole family for some hands-on learning focused on essential knowledge about recycling. It promises to be fun and educational.
And I know there's a big group of folks who'll be very happy to hear that the Liberty Recreation Center annual block party is coming back. It is going to be April 30th. So that's a busy day, April 30th.
Shannah, have you noticed some new signs around town?
I have, in fact, noticed them. They're at intersections in different parts of the town.
Right. The city's installing these signs. It's a really important issue, and we've heard from a lot of our residents about their concerns regarding this issue. We see a lot of people at intersections that are either asking drivers for money or trying to sell things. And we don't want anyone to think that people in need in the city of Plano aren't adhered to, because we really do emphasize trying to help people who really need help. But what's happening here is it's creating a dangerous situation for the pedestrians that are going into the roadway, and really for the drivers too, because anytime a driver is distracted from driving, it's a dangerous situation. So what we're telling people to do, and chime in here, is not to give money at the locations. There's better ways to give to people who really need help. And mainly, we have partnerships with these nonprofit organizations in Collin County and Plano. We want people to go through the proper channels to truly get the help they need. So if you want to donate, we're recommending you probably give to those organizations that can help these people. And another thing that's very important is we reach out to the people who are there at the intersections, and we offer up these services. We lead them to the resources. So we don't want people to think that it's a situation we're being uncaring and insensitive. We're not. We just don't want people to be endangered by going into the line of traffic from a very narrow intersection.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that, Steve. And the other thing, remember, traffic is not slow. I mean, yes, you're at an intersection, but if the light is green on most of these roadways, the speed limit is at least 40 miles an hour. So that's a very, very dangerous situation. And, I think we'd want you to know as well that not everybody who is standing asking for help is actually a person that's in need. That's why it's important for the city to partner with organizations who are specialized. Of course, we have trained mental health professionals on our staff that work in neighborhood services and work in the police department. They're specialized, and they make sure that people who need help are offered help. We have all of this information, including a picture of what the signs look like, and a link to those organizations if you're interested in getting involved, either with your time, talent, or money. Those are linked on our website. So we'll put that in the show notes.
Let's talk about something else that's going on that we're seeing a lot of around town, and that's construction. And we're not talking about road construction, though there is a lot of that. We're talking about projects that are happening around the city, from Collin Creek to the old Market Square Mall to housing going on at the corner of Custer and Legacy. Much else. There's work going on, seems to be just about everywhere.
Yeah. And so, as we kind of alluded to earlier, we thought it'd be helpful today to really have a longer discussion about how these projects come to be. Development, as you and I know, Steve, and maybe not everybody does, is largely governed by zoning laws. I mean, zoning tells you what you can and can't build on a certain piece of property. And zoning can be changed, but there's an entire process around changing zoning. And there's also a process before a project even gets started. Whether there's a zoning change or not, there's a process to that. So today we thought our focus of the podcast would be on zoning and development. It feels like a very timely topic. So how projects come to be, how you can know about them, how you can know about proposed zoning changes, and how to give your feedback on those proposed zoning changes.
Our special guest today is our planning director, our good friend, Christina Day. Christina, thank you for joining us on Inside Plano.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
I got to tell you, Shannah, I call Christina the queen of cool because, in the wild world of planning and zoning, she's always cool in the face of anything that comes up. And it's always impressed me.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you all very much.
So, Christina, we always like to start these interviews. We know you as a coworker, and sometimes we know you a little better than a coworker. But tell us something about yourself that most people who work with you don't know.
Well, something that is perhaps interesting is that I'm a second generation city planner. Those are fairly rare, being that it's a relatively new profession. And so my mother was a city planner back in the 1960s and 70s. So I grew up hearing about planning topics, was regularly toured through the city with commentary as a child. So I think it's just sort of become a part of who I am.
Where was your mother a planner?
At the city of Oklahoma City.
So let's talk about zoning. Why is zoning so very important?
So zoning is important because it protects the public health, safety, and welfare. Those are the primary drivers for zoning. It really grew out of the rise of industrialization that happened a century ago, a little more than a century ago now. And so that was the reaction of people protecting their well-being in cities and populated areas by using this legal tool that was really new in the last century called zoning. It also provides predictability for land investment. That is a great economic development tool. So people know what to expect when they buy a piece of land, both what they can do on their property and what their neighbors can do on their property. And that is a wonderful incentive for investment.
So, Christina, I think the zoning process, that sometimes we forget because it feels like projects happen overnight just because time goes by quickly. But the zoning process is actually pretty involved. Can you talk a little bit about what the main steps of the zoning process is?
Yes, I sure can. The zoning process at its minimum takes 2 months, but the majority of cases take longer than that. And that's because they'll start out with a pre-application meeting. We like to meet with anyone who's interested in a zoning case and talk through what the issues are, provide some advice, some perspective. So that's a standard part of anyone who's interested in zoning, what they bring to the city. Then they file a petition. Once that is prepared, they provide us all the information, essentially the application process. Once that's received, we prepare public notices. That includes, they are required to put signs on the property. There are written notices that go out, or newspaper notices that can go out in some circumstances. And so there's a fairly extensive public notice process that goes on trying to get the word out. We also have more informal practices that aren't related to legal standards, that where the city goes above and beyond. Things like any kind of postings we do through our zoning alert system or our webpage. All that information is available to help spread the word about zoning situations. Then after that, and really during the notice process, staff is actively engaged in a review of the city's policies related to the request. And we're talking to the property owner saying, hey, here are some ways you can potentially change your request to come into better conformance with the city's desires as written in their policies. So we're working through that process on trying to get the best product essentially to the finish line for the Planning and Zoning Commission to consider. Then there's a public hearing at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on the published date. And at that point in time, the commission hears public comment. They also hear the applicant's side of the story. They get to stand up and make a presentation on kind of their pitch on what it is they want to do. Staff provides information on the city's policies. And then P&Z will deliberate, make a recommendation to City Council. Sometimes the item gets tabled, but oftentimes they go ahead and make a recommendation, and ultimately that's their goal. Then that moves forward typically in 3 weeks to the City Council, and that is then goes through a very similar process. Information is provided to the council, staff presentation, applicant presentation, and then opportunity for the public to speak. So that is the process. Council is the final decider with regard to zoning. So that is the ultimate decision, and any changes then are placed on the city zoning map.
Just a quick question. Do people go through that zoning process regardless of whether it's a zoning change or a project that already conforms to the existing zoning?
It's only required if there's a zoning change needed. So zoning basically establishes a framework of land development rules. And so the premise is if you're operating within those rules, you do not need to come back and ask permission through a zoning process. Those are the plans and plats you'll see on the Planning and Zoning Commission's agenda. They are what we call by right development, and that just means I'm meeting the rules of the city's zoning standards. So if people are doing that, they don't have to come back and ask for rezoning. But let's say they are not fully able, or the project doesn't fit well within the zoning that exists on the property. So their proposal, they would need to file a zoning application at that point in time to change the zoning. So that's where we see zoning change requests. Otherwise, the rest of development just goes through a fairly administrative approval process through staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Very cool. So if I want to know what the zoning is for a property that's around me, is there a way to find that out?
Absolutely. I like to recommend that people call a planner if you want to know about zoning. And our number is 972-941-7151. It's a complicated issue, zoning is. It uses a lot of kind of acronyms and jargon. And so if you're talking to a planner, the good thing is that you can get, I think, more complete understanding and better answers. But we also have a lot of information available online for people that are interested in self-service. So you can look at plano.gov under the planning department. There is a zoning map online that's interactive. You can see active cases, active development projects, the current zoning on property. There's links to the appraisal district that'll show you the kind of tax records and so forth associated with that property. So again, lots of information, links back to the base zoning. We've tried to make it as simple as possible for people to figure that out. There's also a relationship between the map and the zoning ordinance. So you may need to cross-reference the zoning ordinance to figure out what PD 133 RO2 means. Yeah, that may not be obvious to everyone. So again, if you're not talking to someone on the planning staff, you could also do your own research in the zoning ordinance.
Very good. I was just going to ask you, and the terminology is very confusing in zoning. Uh, where can people find out the terms and the abbreviations other than the place you just mentioned? Or is that the best place for them to go?
I think the best place for them to go is to, I mean, there are links on the interactive map. So that to me is the best way to try to kind of get you guided in the right direction. If something is a plan development district, it'll link you to the plan development district. If something has a specific use permit, it'll link you to the specific use permit. So there's a lot of built-in links to make navigating the situation easier. But the zoning ordinance is the gold standard with regard to zoning, is where the rules are written. So that's the best place that I recommend. And then, of course, you can call a planner, as I've previously mentioned, or we are also working on updating a development handbook. This is something that previously existed online, but we're working on refreshing that information. And so that should be available for people online um, sometime within the year. It's a interdepartmental effort, and so it should provide really complete information on the development process.
Is there a way that people can find out if a zoning change request has been filed?
Absolutely. There are numerous ways. I think the easiest way, I think we're all looking for easy, right? And so we have this fantastic new tool called the Zoning Case Alert System. So that allows anyone to go online, you sign up, and you can select any zip code in Plano or all zip codes in Plano. And so it's really customized. If you only care about things in your area, great. If you want to know what's happening through the whole city, equally great. You can really do what you want to do. And we'll send you an email when a zoning case is submitted in the area you've defined. And so you can check that out. There is also an active zoning case webpage that lists all the zoning. That includes references to any standards that are unique to that case, to any plan that's associated with that case. All the documents are there online, so it's very easy to, we hope, very easy to find the information. It also will tell you scheduling. So if something is unscheduled or if something is already headed to P&Z or council, it gives you those dates. So those are the, I think, the two easiest kind of self-service ways to find out about zoning.
So it sounds like there's a lot of interaction between applicants and our planning department. At what point in a zoning process, or what points, perhaps, if there are more than one, can residents get involved and provide feedback to the city, to the applicants on what they think of the zoning request changes?
Well, I would encourage residents to call and ask questions at any time. Often, when signs go up, we'll get calls from interested parties wanting to know what's happening on the nearby property or property that they see. So that they can call at any time you see and you're just curious. Of course, you can try to look on the interactive map page that we talked about earlier if you want to do the self-service route. But uh, the planner that is managing the case always has the latest information, so they're a great person to contact. Uh, then they can also submit information. We have a zoning response page, so that is specifically set up for citizen input, and it gets mapped. That's really nice there. The council and the zoning commission really care a great deal about the location of responses. You know, how close are there, close in responses, or are these responses further away from the site? Because proximity often makes a difference in zoning. So you can put in your address and your comments, and those are sent to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council prior to the meeting, as well as the feedback being mapped to the location of the interested party. So there are also official notices that we mail. So if you own property within 200 feet, if you respond in writing, if you send us a signed letter under state law, that has legal bearing on the case, because if enough people or enough property owner, it's based on the acreage of the property within 200 feet. If there's enough protest there, it's 20% of the acreage, then that requires what's called a supermajority vote at the city council level. So that's 75% of the city council. 6 members have to vote to approve the case if there's enough protest. So you actually have a legal weight in the case if you're within 200 feet. So I would encourage, if you get a zoning notice, if you're within 200 feet, take that seriously, because you have some level of control in the process, frankly. Then we also send courtesy notices to people within 500 feet to make sure they're aware. And the best way for you to respond if you're in that area is through the zoning case response map online. The final way that people can participate is through speaking or registering an opinion at a public hearing. So you're welcome to attend the meetings at Planning and Zoning or City Council. You can come down and speak, and the chair or the mayor dictates the amount of time, but generally it's around 3 minutes that people have an opportunity to speak. And or you can just register an opinion. You're welcome to come to the meeting. Don't feel like you can't come to the meeting if you don't want to speak in public. You can also attend the meeting and just register your opinion. So those are some other ways people can participate.
So it sounds to me like residents can actually get involved very early in the process. Once that sign is up, make a call, get involved. They don't have to wait all the way to public hearings at Council on Planning and Zoning, although they're certainly welcome to do that. Is that correct?
That's right. We always encourage applicants when they come in at that pre-application meeting stage I talked about to reach out to residents, reach out to homeowners associations in the area. We send notices to the homeowners associations, but we ask them to do the same. And so we're hoping that anyone that is within the immediate vicinity is having an opportunity to speak with the applicant themselves and hear directly from them about their proposal.
Very good.
Well, Christina, I think it's great that our planning department is not only making planning and zoning easier for our residents to understand, but also a lot more accessible to become involved in the process. That's really wonderful to see. So thank you for joining us today, everyone. Our planning director, Christina Day. Thanks you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
You can stay up to date with what's going on in the city by subscribing to Plano City News. We have a weekly email newsletter, or you can subscribe to Plano's YouTube channel. We have lots of great videos that are published there every week, including the Plano City News local news wrap-up on Fridays.
Yes, and that's hosted by Steve
Yours
Stoller
truly.
himself. One other thing that's coming back, and I want to go ahead and talk about it now because there's kind of a deadline. Spots are going fast. The community garage sale is coming back to Oak Point Rec Center. That'll be in early May. You do have to pre-purchase your space, and you'll want to keep an eye on Parks and Recreation's website. We've got a link to that so that you can secure your spot. With that, we know we had a very long podcast today talking about zoning. We hope that's helpful. I think the big takeaway for me, Steve, and don't know if it was for you, is call a planner. A planner would love to talk to you. He's nodding yes.
Yeah, we have so much information available online, but the old saying, go directly to the horse's mouth, and that way you'll get great information. And like you said, Shannah, they're always happy to talk to our residents or anybody who has questions.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of being happy to help and happy to answer questions, Steve and I are always happy to answer your questions. And thank you so much for your feedback that you send to us about the podcast through the Ask Plano email line. That email is askplano@plano.gov. And of course, you can reach us on all of our social channels and other methods. While you're listening to this podcast, do us a favor, leave us a rating or a review. It helps other people find our show, and maybe share it with one of your neighbors too. Until then, we'll talk to you next month. Have a great one, Plano.
Take care, everybody.
And that's it for our Inside Plano. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did doing it.
If you have any comments or suggestions, send them to us at askplano@plano.gov. Bye.
Talk to you next month. The Inside Plano podcast is brought to you by the City of Plano.